go to your bed over there. Come on. Go to your bed. So, what did we say?
So we were going to talk about aspects of meditation that I think probably most people think about. Well, they think when they think meditation, they'll be thinking about. So let's say focusing on something.
Yeah, it's probably something we all done.
Yeah.
In the beginning.
Yeah.
When you start practicing.
Yeah.
I know I did.
Yeah.
Because that's the first thing you come across. The idea of meditation is the idea of
focusing the mind.
Concentration in terms of focusing, and then expecting the results to sort of come automatically out of you just doing this method of focusing.
Yeah.
So what kind of focusing were you doing?
So I guess first of all the idea was focusing your attention on this sort of triangle here around your nose, where breathing is happening. So you're basically just sort of focusing on the process of breathing and doing it as a kind of observing air passing over this area. Yeah. And then it was like, and then the idea was like, you get smaller and smaller and smaller. You get that area becomes smaller and smaller and smaller until you're focusing on just a pinpoint here, and yeah.
And what were you thinking, like, while you were doing the focusing practice?
That I should be doing. What am I doing?
Well, no. When you were doing the focusing practice,
I was thinking.
What were your thoughts in terms of? What were you thinking that you were focusing on?
Oh, okay. Well, that was the thing. I was spending most of the time wondering about that, what it was that I was supposed to be focusing on, and what I was doing, and whether I was doing it right. But that was all kind of superfluous to the meditation.
Sure.
Yeah, but the meditation was, okay, what are you focusing on here? So the idea, I guess, was what that was being encouraged was a kind of, I would say, like an objective, sideways view on the air that happens to be passing this area here. Not me breathing, but this sort of...
As if you can perceive things that are out there, outside of your experience.
That's right, as a third, from a third person
that doesn't pertain to your experience, your perception. Yeah. That's the fundamental problem with any focusing practice. Whatever the technique might be, if it's a technique of observation and focusing and sort of preying upon moments, as the sutta would sort of describe it, the problem with that is you assume this external world independent of your perception, yet the only way you can relate to it is to perceive it, as in the experience it. But you assume, through experiencing it, that it's outside of your experience and you can be objective about it. But how can you even conceive the idea of outside of my experience unless you're thinking it experientially, so to speak? So you're contradicting on both fronts.
Yeah.
And that's the sole problem. Focusing on this on account of that, that's whatever. That's just what mind does. Mind picks the dhammas to look at. That's just how it works. But you assuming that those things stand for that which they cannot stand for, such as an external world independent of me that is subjected to these scientific laws of impermanence, thus the Buddha and the science are saying the same thing. All these views that you hear today are completely misguided because they're rooted in this utter assumption of external to me, yet the only way I can know it is experiencing it by myself.
But is it you're focusing on something objective? Like there's this objective flow of air that happens to be going through this objective nose on the front of my face.
Yeah.
But also, there's this kind of you have to sort of stand back and look at it from a position of objectivity. So
which is very subjective.
Yeah, exactly. How could it not be?
Even arahant doesn't become purely objective because that's inconceivable.
Yeah.
That means like stepping outside of the aggregates and being there with objective matter.
Yeah.
That's inconceivable. he just stops appropriating his subjectivity.
Yeah.
That's why the Arahant still has like individuality in terms of a character, a habits, and all these things. They are not rooted in greed, aversion, delusion, of course.
Yeah.
And yeah, people find subjectivity to be the problem. And it is a problem. But then instead of understanding truly what is the problematic aspect of subjectivity and then abandoning that, they think you can simply replace subjectivity by emulating this assumption of objectivity.
Isn't the kind of idea trying to get rid of the basically there's always a point of view.
Yeah, of course.
There's always a perspective. I can't have an experience without a point of view. Whereas many attitudes towards meditation are kind of
trying to negate
that, trying to forget that, trying to take a third person perspective or like a God's eye view on.
Sure.
Your
so we can do the same like what we've done before. Like let's take focusing now. So focus on your body touching the chair, like right now. What are the characteristics of that? How would you describe it?
Well, you asked me to focus on my body, get on the chair, and I just sort of looked into something that was already there. It's already kind of given this sense of, I can feel something. But it's totally inseparable from the body. It's not like. Like the chair touching my body, or my body touching the chair. It's just this kind of sort of pressure or something. I don't know.
That's a touch, basically. It's your only relationship you can have with it.
Mm.
So if you're focusing now, I'm focusing as well. You realize you can only focus on something that's already there, given.
Mm-hmm.
But now you have a choice. So you focus on it, as in you bring your attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
But now you have a choice. I have a choice. Everybody has a choice. And that choice is, I can now continue to just keep repeating this focusing mechanically, or I can try to understand the nature of that thing that's necessary for my focus.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see those two are mutually exclusive directions.
Mm-hmm.
If I keep, but I'm touching the chair. I'm touching the chair. I'm touching the chair. Means you're actively avoiding the direction of, okay, you touching the chair, now let it be there so you get to understand the necessary basis for your attending that in the first place.
Which is
all the other characteristics we discussed in other videos. Okay, so you can only really focus on something, attend to something, if it was given as a possibility. And by that I mean if it's given beforehand. It's already there, thus you are able to turn to it.
In a domain.
And it's that peripheral aspect of, it's already there without me without directly attending it. So it's already there as a possibility, means it's already there on its own. Which means even my ownership is secondary to that basis of possibilities that present themselves as possibly mine. And you can get to understand it, and then you realize, okay, so that's all you need to do. Stop regarding it as mine. And you can forget all the focusing you want. Done. You fulfill the purpose of your focusing. But if your purpose is just to focus for the sake of focusing, means you're actively then avoiding understanding things.
So focusing. So people are like going in a particular direction. You said mutually exclusive direction. So focusing in on this mechanical particular thing. This one particular thing, and then later the next particular thing is sort of the same.
So focusing, as a rule of thumb, follows the ideal of attending to the particular at the expense of everything else. Exactly. And that's why it's a problem. Because
understanding is always rooted in the totality of your experience.
Exactly, in understanding the context of your particular.
Yeah.
And that's why the whole point is, any form of focusing is already singling out particular. But obviously within that particular, you can go even further. Yeah. So you choosing to attend your body position seated on the chair, it's a particular thing you focused on. And that's more than sufficient. Now you want to understand the nature of that thing that you focused on, that is still there because you brought your attention to it, and you don't need to keep holding on to it. Because if I ask you, are you still touching the chair? Yes, of course. You wouldn't, hold on, I need to figure that out. Recall the memory. No, the knowledge is still there because you attended it, you clarified it simply by focusing on it. But instead of that, then people who follow the rule of focusing for the sake of focusing would then focus on the chair, then focus on the more specific notions of your body on the chair, and focus on even more. So focus within focusing, within focusing, within focusing.
That's generally the idea.
And that's the idea, that's how you arrive at some sort of knowledge. You realize, but that's why I ask you, what do you think then you're focusing on? What can you focus on? You can only focus on a possibility that presented itself as being able to focus. Yeah. Which means when you start practicing this focusing upon focusing, and you actually develop a belief that you are focusing on the actual rupa, on the actual matter, on the actual objectivity, while in reality, all you can focus is on your thoughts. In other words, your thoughts give you the focus that you can focus on.
Yeah.
So when you are thinking about the objective matter, you're thinking about a thought that has fully misconceived the nature of matter and presented itself as that which is the matter. And that's like the essence of Mullapariyaya Sutta. Obviously taken in a very extreme sense. But the point is, even doesn't matter how far you're committed in your focusing practice, how specifically, how particularly you're staring at things, all you can do is focus at a risen Dhamma as such. Dhamma as a counterpart of your mind. So it's not, oh, I must stop doing that. No, all I have to stop doing is stop misconceiving that my thoughts can stand for that objective world, which I keep sort of fueling the assumption of it through this practice of focusing. Because I am thinking I'm getting closer to the pure materiality or something that will then free me from any subjectivity.
And basically the Buddha's teaching is not about just...
It's about understanding of the Dhammas.
That's the thing, it's all about understanding.
It's not about
just...
So what you're saying is that focusing is about getting deeper into the objects, into a smaller object, more particular object.
But that's the thing.
For what?
That's the thing. So that's what I want to say. So some people,
I think that can vary.
They'll respond and say, well, hang on, no, but I get lots of benefit from my meditation practice, which is focusing on small things, particular things, more and more particular. I notice the more I do it, the more refined and the more subtle, the more particular things I've never noticed before, I start to notice, and that means awareness.
Right. So where is the nature of things found? In the particular exemplification of that?
They don't see them, they're not interested in the nature of things.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Which means they're not interested in the Dhamma.
No.
Because the definition of the Dhamma
means
is the nature of things.
Yeah.
So the definition of the Dhamma is in the direction of the general, the direction of opposite of the direction of your particular focusing.
So what is it that keeps people doing this? Why do so many people keep going in that direction?
It's deeply rooted view that you get rid of your attavada by cancelling it. You overcome subjectivity by denying it.
Isn't it also that it's actually quite pleasant?
Oh yeah, no, that's on a more immediate level. I'm talking about the view. But the point here, when you mention like when you're getting deeper into things, that's usually the belief. But you can't get deep. You always remain on the surface. That's when like perception will always remain perceiving the perception. Perception cannot really bring you into the matter. Because that would mean that you can access rupa, which the Buddha says is inaccessible. It can only find a footing in your experience through you providing a basis of misconceiving.
So it feels like
you're getting deeper, but you always remain there. That's what I mean. Doesn't matter how far you got focused, you realize all I'm focusing is on the Dhammas.
Another thing.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter if it's this particular level or this particular level, the nature remains completely the same. And if you're ignorant of that, means your pursuit of focusing is endless.
And you're saying you're delighting in the novelty of an object.
Feels novel. This feels like I'm noticing things I've never noticed before, which means I must be learning things.
Well, if you were to like, I remember for myself, you start and it kind of feels like a novelty. Feels like not like you're so focused on particular movements. Basically, kind of exercising this sort of contrived sense of control. But you can only sustain that so far. Yeah. But initially, it creates this sense of novelty whereby, oh wow, I'm experiencing things differently. Yeah. But again,
new things are happening.
All things doesn't matter. Where can difference happen? It can happen on the level of particular.
But also, you can convince yourself that you're being more aware. because
Okay, let's not jump into every possible angle people can take. Let's just clarify the pleasure we started on.
Okay.
Yeah. So the point is, if it comes down to, again, think about yourself now, focusing. Why would you carry on focusing? As you said yourself, because it feels good. It feels peaceful. It feels like less cluttered and so on. So bringing attention to things feels less cluttered, feels more directional. That's fine. But why would that then justify you constantly bring attention, bring attention, bring attention, bring attention? Means you still don't understand where that peace comes from. And that's in the other talk that I explained, like the simile of the anchor, throwing down the anchor. You throw the anchor and then you let the boat sort of float around because it's anchored. So you know it can't go too far, you allow it to move around. The idea of focusing, it's like throw the anchor, pull the anchor, throw the anchor, throw the anchor, throw the anchor, throw the anchor. That's it. I'm focusing, I'm focusing, I'm focusing. Because the idea of floating about is too overwhelming. So the whole point of doing the focusing practice would be you just want pleasure. Or you just want to avoid any liability to suffering, to discomfortable feelings, to uncomfortable feelings. That's it. So it becomes a management to your liability to suffering. Or if I focus hard enough, basically I won't think about things that bother me.
Yeah, it's sort of basically putting your head in the sand.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying in the other talk, the idea of concentration for most people, it's like you focus so hard on one point where you forget everything else.
And that's why everyone calls it absorption.
Yeah,
as if that's a good thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you're absorbed in something, then that means you're basically
unmindful.
You're not aware of anything else.
Yeah. But one-pointedness, as we described before, it's the point that includes everything else, regardless of the content. And that's exactly what we describe it. So you focus on your experience as a whole. My experience now, I'm focusing on being seated on the chair. Okay? You brought your attention to it. Now that's the container for your context. Let's see what comes up with it. Oh, so while I'm seated on the chair, we're talking about these various ideas that are wrong, that are rooted in wrong assumptions. While I'm seated on the chair. While I'm seated on the chair, I have these feelings arising. While I'm seated on the chair, I have these other thoughts arising. While I'm seated on the chair. But if you're doing the focusing practice, you'll be ignoring all these things that are happening. But I'm seated in the chair. I'm seated, touching, leaning, touching, leaning, thinking. Oh, so you're not seated on the chair? No, you are, but now you forgot that. Because you think the whole purpose is just to be fully absorbed in focusing right in front of you. And how can you then be fully absorbed in what's in front of you without doing that at the expense of the nature of that thing? At the expense of everything else that's not in front of you. And that's why it's inherently wrong. You can't do it right. You cannot have the right outcome.
Cancelling out the context.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You're basically saying I'm not interested.
And that's again, like people, probably many people.
I'm all about content.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm just interested, delighting
in the next thing.
And that's another sutta that people, probably many people read, but they would not necessarily see a connection with this. What we're talking about is that one when it says, all these samanas and brahmanas, they say we are meditators. We meditate. But what they do, it's like an owl preying upon, like waiting for a fish, or a jackal waiting for
the next meal, which kind of
exactly. So imagine, just don't take my word for it. Imagine if you were a hunter. So there's a little hole, and you're waiting for a rabbit, a hare to come out. You want to catch it. What would you be doing?
You'd be focusing.
You'd be focusing, exactly. At the expense of everything else.
Yes,
Because that's how important this is to you, to catch it.
Yeah.
And when the Buddha described them, when he said all these people call themselves meditators, but all they do, they are like a jackal trying to catch a prey.
Yeah.
They call themselves... So basically trying to focus and catch and attend and grab at the moment, whatever you want to call it. And he said whoever does that, does so rooted in sensuality. They meditate with sensuality. Because you meditate with that, like, this is on the basis of my senses, sense of touch, usually sense of touch, but sense it can be visual, whatever else, audible. The point is, you're catching the moment that you believe that it has significance for you, profound significance, you yourself kind of gave it, in a way with your wrong views, that if you catch the moment rightly, sufficient amount of time, it will purify everything that needs to be purified without you needing to think about it or address it on an every single basis. So focus, got it. I got the moment. I had this great experience. My body felt so light. It was like disappearing. Oh, so that must mean that I've succeeded somehow. And that's usually like, I had experience, oh, now I have to interpret it, which means I have no understanding of experience. Now I have to fabricate it. Because even if you have the lofty, unusual experience of your energy in your body and whatnot, what's the nature of it? It means slightly less common experience of this body here, as opposed to more common daily experience of this body here. Either way, there is this body here.
So normally people would think you do the meditation, but then afterwards you'll have this profound experience, and then you have to interpret that.
Make sense out of it.
But that actual making sense out of it, that's the meditation.
Yeah.
That's when you start.
Well, that's closer
that's
to what meditation
that's the
is.
direction that you need to be going in.
Yeah. I mean, the best meditation the Buddha praised is the meditation of jhana. How to develop jhana? By understanding what jhana is. So by not dwelling on the theme of jhana, as in this is what jhana is, I keep thinking about it, dwelling on it, monk enters it. By not dwelling on the theme of jhana, he doesn't develop it. As simple as that. But with a whole sort of, commentarial evolutionary take of watching nostrils leads to absorption, leads to jhana, leads to whatnot.
Yeah.
Anapanasati Sutta doesn't talk about jhanas at all.
And because then that
talks about 4 foundations of mindfulness. So practice mindfulness of the breathing and fulfills your awareness of the peripheral. Fulfills your knowledge of the background in regard to that which you're focusing.
Rather than
some sort of mystical
disappears.
absorption of focusing.
Everything disappears, you just lose all senses.
And that was the meditation of breathing. What I saw. While I'm sitting here, I have such and such feeling arising and enduring. And I still feel like that while I'm sitting here, while we're talking about these themes. And I don't need to try to catch anything actually. All you need to do is stay at the doorway, which is you determine through your initial act of focusing of, oh, this is my situation. My situation is being seated in the chair in this room with 2 other people and 6 dogs. That's it. Within that now, everything that happens will happen within it. And you don't need to chase it. And countless similes the Buddha gave. But usually it's the man sort of surveys the outskirts of the city. There's no any in and out way, entry or exit, except one big gate. And he decides, well, if I stay at the gate, I'll know whoever's in and I'll know whoever's out. I don't need to chase people individually in or try to get them outside. I just need to stay here. And the idea of how do you stay here while things are changing, it's not by focusing. It means I'm at the gate. People coming in and out, but you're looking at the gate. No, you stay by understanding this. So this is the present container. This is the entry and exit point. I'll keep that in mind. That's it. That's samadhi. Keeping things in mind. Keeping things together, isn't it? Samadhi.
Composure.
Composing things.
Yeah.
So you compose your situation through revealing it, through attending to it. So don't be completely mindless and non-attentive. But doing attention for the sake of attention means actually ignoring the situation. You cannot attend to that which is peripheral to what you're attending. So I'm attending to this means that other things that are there simultaneously present cannot be attended to. And it's not the point to attend to all of them. The point is that what you attend, recognize or attend to that which is a natural container to everything else.
So basically the nature of your experience involves the presence of other things, this periphery, this other things that you aren't attending to right now.
Yeah.
So if you're...
Because when I asked you to focus on your body, for example, I could have asked you to focus on something else. That's equally there. That can serve as a footing for anchoring.
But so any meditation that avoids this acknowledging the periphery of whatever it is you're attending to
is micca.
It's going to be missing the whole nature of your experience.
It's going to be like a jackal trying upon and ignoring everything else. Like a cat catching the fish and ignoring everything else. And the Buddha mocked it. He said, with his shoulders drooping, head swinging basically, sleeping, drooling. I'm a meditator because I have this powerful concentration where I...
Isn't it funny? That is actually the nature of falling asleep. When you fall asleep,
everything else gets excluded.
You're lying on your bed and you're thinking about whatever it is you're thinking about, and then at some point you forget the background where I'm lying in my bed here.
Sure, and you're done.
And you're absorbed in the particular thoughts.
That's why even in your dreams, if you end up in a dream, something that requires slightly higher degree of reflection, you immediately wake up.
Yeah.
That's just how it works.
Or you just remember where you are.
Yeah.
Oh,
you wake up. You can't remain asleep.
I'm thinking about this while I'm lying here. Yeah. That's what waking is. So basically, the common idea about what meditation is very similar to what happens when you're falling asleep.
In a way, yeah. In a way, yeah. And I think it has similar physical manifestations as well.
Yeah.
But another thing that often gets tied when this focusing practice is the idea of sensations.
Yeah. That's an whole other area.
As if some sort of a hybrid phenomena that's kind of in between perception and feeling.
So at the beginning, I was talking about focusing on this, but another thing that I used to do, I think a lot of people do, is so focusing on sensations in the body, with the rationale that that's what the Buddha meant by Vedana.
Sure.
Feeling.
But then when we described the Vedana, he said what they are: pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. So what difference does it make if your sensation is in your elbows or your shoulders or your nose, when all you need to look for is this pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral? And if you start looking at that, you'll see that pleasantness, unpleasantness, and neutrality is not localized in your perception of spatial body. Cannot be.
So it can't be.
So when they say bodily feeling, it's basically a mental feeling in regard to the body. When they say mental feeling, it's a mental feeling in regard to the mind. Either way, feeling is cetasika, as the Buddha said in the suttas. It's mental, always mental. So you observing, there you go, observing sensation in your legs means you're perceiving sense of touch in your legs.
Yeah.
That then somehow starts to stand for the feeling, Vedana. So how can you perceive Vedana? How is that possible? I'm perceiving what I'm feeling. But the Buddha said feeling is that which feels, that it's felt, and perception is that which perceives, that perceives. So how can you then perceive what you feel?
The sensations are usually described as like...
Well, from the point of view of perception, they're described as feelings. If you look at feelings, they're described as perceptions.
Yeah.
And you will maintain that ambiguity, that confusion, that contradiction, because you don't clarify what it is.
So so when people are observing sensations,
exactly. What can you observe? You can only observe a perception.
In like you're kind of standing back. Like it was actually described as like a doctor. Imagine you're a doctor looking down.
That's all fine.
So that's the third person.
Nobody denies the existence of sensations, or that which you refer to as sensations.
Yeah.
But it's the confusion that you imply with it, as if that which you're perceiving is your feeling. Thus, all I need to do is stop ignoring start ignoring or maintain the ignorance of how I'm actually feeling, and keep hoping for the right perception that will reveal the nature of feeling and everything else to me, because you assume that it can be perceived. So yeah, you can. I have various sensations in my back after a bee stings you, but that's not how I feel. Those are things that I perceive, because the body is spatial, three-dimensional. It has the insides, has the outsides, and the touch receptors go both ways. So you can feel internal sort of perceptions, which are sensations. But then you saying that that's what your feelings are, that's how you maintain the wrong view. Because feelings are felt on the level of the mind. That's why I always start with like, what's your mood right now? That's where the feelings are.
Yeah.
I'm feeling pleasure in my hand. No, you have agreeable perceptions in your hand that result in experience of pleasure.
Yeah.
That's it. So it's not you must stop paying attention to sensation. No, you just must stop misconceiving feelings with your sensations.
The idea of feelings in my body.
Exactly.
Feelings being in a place.
Yeah. Feelings are placed in this body.
Yeah.
So then you can measure the feeling. by the means of perceptions.
Yeah.
It was like at surgery I had in my hand.
Oh.
And they sort of they numb the area, they numb it out, so you don't feel anything. So you don't sense
the language
anything.
uses for you.
So you don't sense anything, you don't sense any pain. But they would numb it out, and I could feel them pulling on the tendons.
Yeah.
Which is not something that is agreeable to me.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I could feel that, and I thought, it's not numb enough, because I feel pain.
Yeah.
I feel pain.
Yeah.
But I'm sensing only the pulling of the tendon, which is disagreeable. And so they would numb it out even more. And still the pain was there. And I realized, oh wait, they can't numb that out.
Yeah.
They cannot numb the feeling
Yeah.
out. But they can numb, they can change the sensations.
That's how people
For being
experience
sharp or
experience
yeah.
pain in the limbs after they lost a whole limb.
Yeah.
Racking, unbearable
Because
pains.
there's a feeling in regard to the
Phantom
body.
limbs. Yeah.
That's the thing. Feeling is always phantom from the point of view of perception. Feeling can never enter the domain of perception. So you have feeling, perception, and intention are
phantom feeling.
impossible
Yeah.
to disjoin, as the Buddha said. So whenever there is a perception, there is a simultaneously present, enduring feeling. Disagreeable perception, but then some people will find that pleasurable. There are people who find pain being discomfort, extreme piercing discomfort being inflicted upon the body. They find pleasure in it. There are other people who have extreme amount of comfort afflicted to their body and they still find it painful. So mind determines basically the threshold of what's going to be painful or not. Hence the trained body, the body resistant to elements can endure much more. The mind developed in jhanas can endure the roughness of the root of a tree, horrible fermented urine for the medicine, rough hemp robes will be like silk and basmati rice in the king's palace. That's how it will be felt. And that's why the Buddha said you should practice jhana and develop your mind in that sense, correct sense. But if you think that you can actually perceive your feelings, well, you're completely, it's uncalled for, but you end up giving significance to your perception that doesn't deserve. It shouldn't be there. It's misconceiving it. So you don't need to deny sensations or say sensations are wrong. You just need to understand them. And you'll see if you're either taking them as perceptions that stand in for feelings or feelings to stand perceptions or both. But once you clarify them, you won't do that anymore. So you can still use it as a designation and a form of speech. Yeah, I got sensations in my leg. I better change my posture. That's it. Disagreeable perceptions, agreeable perceptions. But how you feel is in its own domain, and it can never mix with any other domain.
And you aren't going to find Vedana by focusing.
No, because what you can focus on is what you can observe. And you can't observe feelings, you can only feel them. But if your only means of any form of effort is on the level of focusing
Then
means
you're
this
never
whole
gonna
domain
be
of
able
what's
to
being
hold-
felt
yeah.
right there simultaneously with it is invisible to you.
Yeah.
Knowledge, however, is a blanket access to all of the domains. Understanding the nature of things that you're not directly focusing on, but discerning it as a necessary basis, means it's based for understanding intention, feeling, and perception for that matter. But yeah, you can use the basis of perception to establish anchoring of your mindfulness.
So
like, for example, light now, right here and now.
Yeah.
If I ask you, is there light or is it dark? Which one is it now?
There's light.
It's light. So whatever you do, whatever we say, whatever you feel, whichever way your body moves, it's done within the container of the light that still endures.
Yeah.
And that's not on you. You didn't create this light. Is there a reason they provide a basis for the whole experience on a more particular level that's happening to you?
And it's not something I can focus on because I can't see it. I can't see the light.
Exactly. Yeah. So you do anchoring properly, you do focusing properly, it's something you don't focus on anymore.
Yeah.
Like focusing means bringing attention to it, but doesn't mean keep attending. No, it means you should understand it now that you attended it.
Even perceptions aren't really things that I'm attending to.
Any of the aggregates for that matter.
Exactly, yeah. So like
That's why the Buddha, as you
I
said in the
attend
last
to
talk,
these things, but within that I can discern various perceptions. They're all with peripheral.
if you have a view that you must attend and focus, you have a view that prioritizes the content
Yeah.
of whatever you're focusing or attending.
Yeah.
Which means that has to be done at the expense of the nature. That's what the Buddha said. Whatever aggregate of perception, so whatever perception, old, new, past, future, far, near, up, down, left, right, whatever particularly the perception might be, he knows perception is there. He doesn't go, oh, this is the... No, perception is there because it has to be in some way, and so you stop being concerned about what way perception is there, you know perception is there. Whatever feeling, past, present, future, far or near, personal, impersonal, pleasant, unpleasant, feeling is there. So every aggregate is present particularly, but if that's all you see, you're ignorant of its nature. Means you're ignorant of the Dhamma. So that's why focusing outlines the picture for you. But understanding is on the level of the opposite of what you're attending. That's why yoniso, manasikara. From the origin. So knowing the origin of this very thing that I'm attending while this origin of that attention is present.
So sort of
how can you attend the origin of your attention? You want to attend it.
No.
In as much, I will see my eye with the same eye.
Yeah.
That is inconceivable. But I will know that there is that because of which I'm able to see that I cannot see. But I can know that it's there as a necessary basis, namely the eye. That's properly exercised yoniso manasikara. And it's all in the suttas.
Yeah, I guess most people would think yoniso means attending carefully, attending that kind of
Yeah, you can attend it carefully on the level of nature of things, not on the level of what you can observe instead.
Yeah.
Because if it's the origin of my attention, how can that same attention attend itself in its origin? Impossible. And the only reason you would keep assuming that is because you don't clarify sufficiently enough that it is impossible. Because if you do, your efforts that would be trying to attend to it would fail.
Yeah, yoniso could be like context of attention.
Well, yeah, pretty much. Yeah. That's what I mean. What can you attend something from nothingness? No, but it needs to be there beforehand.
And that context is the origin of this thing, in the sense that this thing couldn't be what it is without this whole larger context being there.
Attend to your elbows touching the chair. How can you do that if you wouldn't have elbows? If there is no chair, if you're not seated in a particular position, or if you requiring you being leaning on the chair, how can you attend to it? You can't. So the only way you can attend it if it's already there enduring.
And when you attend to any aspect, it's not new.
No.
Like it's not begun.
Yeah.
It's been going on and on and on.
They're enduring.
Yeah. Fully understand that. That's how you also become unable to regard the most volitional choice, decision, as mine, because you see it fully encapsulated within that which cannot be yours.
Because you can only choose what's already there.
Yeah.
Well, the option to choose a certain choice is there, so you choose it. That choice has always been there.
Yeah.
And then, or you can even look, I'm still sitting here. So I'm still, the choice to sit here is still going on.
Yeah.
And if you say now,
Without
but I have a
trying
choice to stand up and change that situation, yes, and you can only do that because there is a possibility for you, as in for the body, to be moved in an upright position. So when you stand up, you just exercise another choice on top of the choice that's been exercised of you sitting. So there is no such choice that can take you outside of the given container of your experience as a whole, from which you can really impartially or independently or like as a master choose without any basis for that choice.
Right.
It's always secondary to it. So the choice, the effects of your choice, the results of your action are within your experience as a whole. They're secondary to it. So if I choose to stand up, I've changed my initially determined sort of base for my mindfulness that I focused on initially to just discern it. But now I can only change it because there is another potential basis that this can be replaced with. Hence the 4 body postures. Because there is no fifth, by the way. You're either going to be standing, laying down, walking, or sitting. That's it. So that's when you start realizing that doesn't matter how much I exercise my choice within this, it's going to be within some limiting container. Fundamentally, that limiting container is the 5 aggregates or the life in itself. You can't do anything unless you're alive. So am I still alive? Yes. So that's the most general container. Because if that's taken away, which can be at any moment, I'm not saying that. My whole life depends upon a muscle that beats inside of my chest. Can I even conceive telling it how to beat, how fast? No, it's just inaccessible to you, inaccessible to the wildest of your imagination. Yet your entire life sits on it like this. And you can't even imagine this thing, how it would change or what would happen to it. And if that goes, none of this can remain. So if you keep that context in your mind, that's basically Maranasati, done correctly. Everything is then put against the backdrop of it's unownable because it's rooted in something that I cannot even have in my imagination, let alone in practice. Thus, whatever I do on top of it is equally unownable by me. Because if you're the owner, you're the master, you're the controller, you're in charge of it. How can you be in charge of something you can't even imagine?
You can't even know the ending. It's going to,
Well, you can know that it's going to end
but
because it hasn't originated from you.
Yeah.
Is it already falling apart?
Exactly.
It's beyond. It's beyond you.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah, inaccessible.
That's the suffering. That it's the murderer waiting to, stab you.
Well, that's the impermanence.
Yeah.
That's anicca.
It's coming for you,
Unownable.
coming for you.
Anicca means impossible to own, impossible to be mine. And what if it's unownable, and yet here I am, depending on it, that is suffering. If it's unownable, it is dukkha. If it's unownable and dukkha, then this sense of myself, I don't own even that. So if it's unownable and dukkha, then my experience is anatta. You don't need to do anatta then. Oh, this is impermanence, this is suffering, and this is the not self. No. This is impermanence, this is suffering. This experience is experienced as not self. So if you see your sense of self as inseparably rooted in that which cannot be your sense of self, which is unownable, inaccessible to you, even in your imagination, then your sense of self, right here and there, will be felt as not my sense of self. So atta and anatta means to basically myself or not myself.
And it's about
Doesn't mean there's no self, because if there is no self, what are you designating by saying there is no self?
it's like allowing that understanding to endure long enough in the background to kind of colour and influence the choices you're making, the decisions you're making. Because you will see that everything that you're doing is bound up within that. It's like, even though you like, but ignoring that.
Ignoring that then takes you in the direction of, oh, I am doing this in the sense of I am the controller, master of this. But at any given point, you can re-establish the fundamental context that if a random muscle that pumps blood from your chest, if that stops, no matter your projects, feelings, hopes, dreams, memories, traumas, happinesses, sadness can remain. Not for a second longer. And okay, so what do I do next? Nothing. Clarify that same thing. That's what you do next. Just allow it to endure and make it clearer and clearer and clearer and harder to forget. That doesn't matter how much I'm involved, how involved I get with things. Simultaneously present is the basis for those things, that it's inaccessible to me. And when I say basis of those things, I mean basis for your own life as well, because your life is another thing. That's it. And you could then see how this contemplation, meditation, samadhi would automatically result in dispassion. How can you exercise passion towards this when you cannot possibly lose the sight of the context that it's inherently? inaccessible to you, unownable, not worth the effort. And that's what it says, like when the monk practices rightly, he starts developing these notions that, oh, this is not worth engaging with. This is not worth delighting in. I can still do it, but now the unworthy aspect of this is way overwhelming, and then you can't do it anymore. The only reason you were doing it is because you were finding it worthy of doing it.
Yeah, passionate about it.
Exactly, passionate about it.
Delighting in it.
Yeah. Become impossible. Passion is worthless. Effort of investing passion becomes inconceivable.
Yeah, whether I delight in it or not, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's going to.
Yeah.
That's it.
Not mine.
That's it. And you don't need to, I must stop. No, just don't lose the sight of that peripheral context. Doesn't matter what you are particularly attending. Beautiful aspects, ugly aspects, beautiful aspects, ugly aspects. Neither. It's on the context of being all rooted in something that I cannot even conceive owning. Thus, pleasure, pain stops bothering me.
And that delight just naturally falls off.
Absolutely.
So you have to kind of fight the delight. Yeah. You just kind of stop.
Yeah, just need to maintain the context in face of it.
Yeah.
That's it. But if all you're doing is focusing on what's in front of you, means your mind will be fully taken by pleasure, fully taken by pain. Because you'll be resisting the pain, prolonging pleasure.
That will always be peripheral, which is you've chosen not to look there.
Yeah. Exactly. The knowledge is on the level of peripheral. Because if you have to keep keeping things that you know in your mind, means you haven't really understood them. You have to keep reminding yourself, because if you forget, the knowledge goes with it, which means that's not knowledge. Things that you really understood, you stop thinking about.
Yeah, you don't have.
And if they're brought up, the understanding is there. Like the Buddha, the simile that when a man asked him, when he asked the Buddha, do you always prepare these answers beforehand?
Yeah.
When people ask, he said, well, let me ask you in return. Europe, master chariot maker or whatever he was. If I were to ask you anything about the workings of the chariots or parts, would you need to prepare the answer? Oh, no. People wake me up in the middle of the night and ask me a question, I'll give them the answer right away, because I have fully understood how a chariot works. All the engineering, the dynamics, just fully understood. So I don't need to prepare anything. When it's asked, the answer is there from that understood context. And he said Dhamma is always the same. That's how Tathagata doesn't prepare the answers. Because you understood it. But if you, again similar to the same chariot maker, if you haven't understood how the chariot actually works, but you read about it, then you, okay, so the wheels in the chassis, okay, the seat.
You have to think about it.
Exactly. You stop thinking about it, gone. Oh God, how does it work? How does it work again? It means you haven't understood it.
Yeah.
And it's not a big surprise then when you read the suttas that that's all the Buddha talks about. Dhamma is all about understanding. Yeah, you attend certain things at the expense of others, as in things that are conducive to non-lust at the expense of things that are conducive to lust, but only so that you can understand the nature of them as they are.
Discerning the nature that is there.
Exactly.
So that thing is there. Like Nibbana.
Yeah, the element of Nibbana, that's what it means. Doesn't mean you're already in Nibbana, it means the possibility of you developing the Dhamma of Nibbana is possible. If you do it right.
It's not something that you create.
It's not outside of your five aggregates.
Yeah.
It's basically the attitude in regard to the five aggregates. It's a particular Dhamma of complete absence of passion in regard to the five aggregates. That's why even Putujana, there's that in Majjhima 30. No. Later on, where he says, when he talks about the conceivings, I'm doing this, I'm attaining this, and he says, at some point, some man can even say, oh, this is Nibbana, and I'm attaining this Nibbana, and this Nibbana is mine.
Yeah, that's right.
And people think, oh, it must be not the real Nibbana. And then the Buddha says, no, it is the real Nibbana. What this man asserts is that which Nibbana is. But he doesn't attain it, as in he doesn't actually develop it properly, because he's still, I am doing this. So he's appropriating it. So the element of Nibbana is basically the experience of absence of greed, aversion, delusion. That's what Nibbana is.
And one can discern that.
One can discern that, yeah. The more you discern it, the more the context will endure. The more the context will endure, the less of you maintaining all these random passions will occur. And when those passions completely go, then on account of the context that you start to discern in, you are then in Nibbana. That's why like Sotapanna understood basically Nibbana, understands the Arahant. Now he needs to develop it. He needs to maintain that context simply through non-engagement with sensuality, through restraint, and that's it. He will have to arrive at the complete eradication of greed, aversion, delusion from that context that has been fundamentally understood. Context of unownable, unpleasurable, and thus not myself, not my own self.
It's that context has been uncovered.
Yeah, uncovered.
It can never be.
That's it.
Can never be
Creating
covered.
Because anything particular can only ever be determined by that context, but not understanding that.
What do you mean?
So you've uncovered the context. When you say you've uncovered the context, basically you've just simply uncovered that which everything is the yoni-so, that which everything is determined by, whether you were aware of that or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that upon which your passion, your aversion, your distraction, delusion depend, is something inaccessible to your passion, to your aversion, and to your delusion.
Mm-hmm.
You fully understand that, you will not be able to maintain passion, aversion, delusion in regard to that thing. That's it.